field training. We immediately responded into the residence. From there, we were advised by the fire department just shortly prior to entering the residence that the female was deceased and there was no further life-saving measures that they could do. From there, I completed a quick search of the residence for anybody lurking inside the residence to confirm that the scene was safe. Not that anyone was hiding in a closet, an attic, a garage, because we want to make sure the scene is safe. I remained with Deputy Mitch, and I believe Deputy Kajawa set up a crime scene log immediately, and we waited until further instruction.
As you were securing the residence, did you make contact with anybody other than law enforcement or EMS or anything like that?
Not inside the residence, no.
Okay. What about outside the residence?
I do not recall everyone who I made contact with outside the residence other than the deputies on scene.
Okay. Ultimately, what was your role in the investigation when you actually got on scene?
My role essentially was being a field training officer for Deputy Mitch. I essentially supervised his actions and I taught him how to investigate the scene. So I believe I did contact my supervisor. I let him know that it was in fact a death scene and that we need supervisors on scene. From there, I essentially was a shadow for my trainee to make sure that he properly investigated the incident.
All right. When you guys were investigating the incident, you were shadowing him essentially. Did you walk through the residence that you went to?
I did.
Okay. Did you and Deputy Mitch look in the garbage or fridge during that time?
I'm sure I did. I don't recall everything that I had located in the garbage or the fridge, but that is probably something I would have done.
Why is that something you would do at a death scene?
Once again, at death scenes, because we treating them all as a crime scene. That's essentially why we set up a crime scene log. We have a deputy posted at the door. We don't let people in or out. We don't know if this was a suicide or a homicide. We don't know the circumstances behind it. So I'm going to start checking areas that maybe give me some clues, such as items in the garbage, items in the refrigerator, along with I'm looking to see even if there's food in the refrigerator. Was this person living here not eating, or did they just buy McDonald's or food yesterday and they're actually eating and surviving?
At some point, did you make a contact or clearly identify the decedent?
I did.
Okay. And she was clearly deceased at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Moving forward, in this investigation, did you locate a notepad on a stool in the residence?
I did. After, I believe, once the detectives had been on scene and the medical examiner was on scene, she pointed out a notepad on a stool that was along like a buffet bar area behind the sink, and there was a notepad on that stool. I was requested by the medical examiner to review and take pictures.
Did you ultimately take pictures of that notepad?
I did.
Okay. And did you review them before court today?
I did.
Or are you asking for permission to approach the witness?
We'll use the technology, right? He's going to approach you electronically, so to speak. The documents that they have, the court will see, you will see, and then presumably we'll go forward from there.
Let me know once you see what you want on your preview screen, and then I'll publish the witness.
It's not up yet. That's your screen, or no, that's there.
You're the state rear, so are you seeing a blue screen? Because
I'm seeing a blue screen.
Yeah, one of her screens is blue, but then she also does have it off.
Might have to, if you're using it as a dual monitor, you have to make sure it's on the correct side.
what you want?
Yes. Deputy, can you see? an
Hold on one
exhibit your
second, I just
screen?
want to confirm, your monitor's working?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Deputy, can you see Exhibit 1 on your screen?
Yes,
And is this one of the pictures that you had taken of the notepad on the October 3rd?
yes, that appears to be the first page of it.
And would that be a true and accurate copy of the picture that you took?
Yes,
Same questions with Exhibit 2. Is this another picture of another page of that notepad?
yes,
And is that also a true and accurate copy of that page of the notepad?
it is.
Okay. Further, this is Exhibit 3 now on your screen. Is this the third page of the notepad?
Yes,
And again, you took this picture,
yep,
true and accurate copy of it.
correct.
Okay. Exhibit 4 here is a lower half of one of the pages of the notepad. Is this another picture that you took on this date?
Correct,
And that's again a true and accurate copy of that.
it is.
And lastly, we have Exhibit 5, which is the upper page of Exhibit 1 actually here. Again, did you take this picture?
That is correct, yes.
And it's a true and accurate copy of it.
It is.
Your Honor, be moving Exhibits 1 through 5 into evidence.
Exhibit 4, that's the lower half of which exhibit?
That is the lower half of page 1.
Any objection?
No.
All right, for the jury then, exhibits 1 through 5 are received.
And I'd be asking for permission to publish Exhibit 5.
Any objection?
No.
All right, permission to publish granted.
Yes.
You starting with 5?
Yes.
Deputy, looking at Exhibit 5, is there a date on the top of Exhibit 5?
There is.
Can you just tell the jury what that date is?
9/26/2015.
Okay, so presumably this note would have been from 9/26 of 2015, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, but at least that's how you interpret it.
Yes.
All right. In looking at this notepad, so not even just Exhibit 5, but all 3 pages of the notepad, in your training experience reviewing these scenes, did you believe this notepad to be a suicide note or notepad?
I did not. Based on some of the information we received that she's had health problems, it appeared like she was essentially telling someone how to feed her cat, run her TV, feed the animals, and how to even get a hold of her in the hospital.
And to just be clear to the jury, where was this stool in the residence?
When you walked into the residence, there was an open concept, and the kitchen was in the center, kind of towards the back of the apartment, and it would be in the center where the living room was, dividing the kitchen, and it would have been on the living room side.
I just have a few more questions for you, Deputy. When, kind of going backwards, when you cleared the residence earlier on this October date, did you locate a Jeep or a vehicle in the residence or in the garage?
I did.
Okay, what was that vehicle?
I recall opening up the door to the garage. I saw a Jeep Wrangler, and I even recall making a comment to my partner because she had the same vehicle saying, hey, she likes Jeeps too. That's the reason I remember it being in there.
Thank you. Just one last question, Deputy. Did you have any other further duties in this investigation?
Essentially from just supervising my trainee, no. I was asked to take pictures, and after completing pictures, I remained with my trainee.
Thank you, Deputy. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Cross, and do you need any of the exhibits published while you're questioning?
Yes, we might. And we're going to have another exhibit, so we need access on our computer.
Go ahead.
So, good afternoon, Mr. Rosenberger. At the scene, you made observations then,
I did, yes.
and you wrote a report,
Correct.
and your report is about a half a page.
That is correct.
As part of your training in law enforcement, you're told to record anything that's significant,
Correct.
and then put it in a report form,
That is correct.
and you did that.
I did. I documented my job on the scene.
Right, which was to, you said today, to look at everything.
Correct.
And there's nothing in here about looking inside the refrigerator.
That is correct.
What, you said you looked in the refrigerator.
To my recollection, yes.
What was in her refrigerator? Tell me the items that were in her refrigerator.
From 5 years ago, I do not recall what was in her refrigerator.
One of the reasons why you would put it in a report, right?
I would, unless I found something that stands out to me, I would not document that in my report.
But one of the benefits of preparing a report is to be able to, months or years later, to be able to go back and look at what you did at a previous date and refresh your own recollection.
Correct.
You read your report to refresh your recollection, didn't you?
I did.
And you met with the district attorney's office to prepare?
That is correct.
And is that why today you came in on exhibit, which exhibit was this one? Exhibit 1, and told us today that the date on the note was September 26, 2015, because they pointed out to you that in your report you wrote 2018, right?
That is correct, and I'd like to answer that
And,
further.
no, I just asked you.
Okay.
Follow-up.
And so when you were there in October of 2016 or 2018, it was your testimony that the medical examiner is the person, the deputy medical examiner is the person who told you to take these photographs?
That is correct.
You wouldn't have done that otherwise.
At that point, I was unsure what the other detectives had fully taken pictures of.
Well, you said you were in a training mode that night.
That's correct.
You were in charge of, you were training another person.
Correct.
So you were taking charge of things and telling him what he should and shouldn't do, right?
My trainee, not the detectives on scene.
Your trainee, Mr. Mix, did you
Yep.
say?
Yep.
When you took photos, these photos that you showed today, did you take any photos of the refrigerator?
I did not.
Did you take any photos of the garbage cans?
I did not.
You said you looked in the garbage cans.
I believe I did, yes.
How many garbage cans are in that house?
At this time, I do not recall how many garbage cans were in the house.
Well, what was in the garbage cans?
I do not recall.
Okay, so you looked at them, but you have no idea of what was in them.
That is correct, yes.
You don't remember seeing alcohol bottles in the garbage cans.
I do not recall that right now.
You don't remember seeing Visine bottles in the garbage can.
No.
How many bathrooms were in this unit?
To my recollection, I believe there were 2 bathrooms.
Okay. Did you take any pictures in the bathrooms?
I was not assigned with taking overall pictures of the residents.
Was the medical examiner assigning people to take certain pictures?
Negative, no.
Okay, so somebody else was taking pictures, but if the medical examiner wanted some, you took them?
That's correct. Detective Loberg had taken the initial pictures, and then that notepad was located additionally by our ME while we were securing the scene or investigating, and she asked me to take additional photographs of it, which is not very uncommon.
Well, when the medical examiner provided us with copies of scene photos, who took the medical examiner scene photos?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
Do you know who took photographs at the scene for the medical examiner? Was there somebody doing that?
Detective Loberg took pictures on our behalf, and I believe the medical examiner took her own photographs.
Was it her, she took them herself?
I believe so, yes.
You saw her taking photos?
To my recollection, I believe she took the photographs.
Now, did you collect any of these pads as evidence?
I did not.
Did anybody at the scene collect these notes?
Not to my recollection, no.
And the note that you talked about on Exhibit 1 is a note from 2015, is that right?
Correct, that's what was written on the top of it.
And it looks like, can we show this exhibit? Number one?
Yeah.
Here we go. Can you make it a little smaller?
Sure.
We're gonna bring up what's already been admitted as Exhibit 1. Can you see that all right on your
No,
screen?
he doesn't have it yet.
Is that what you want?
Yes, I'd like to
Okay.
display it. It's already been
Am I
admitted into
publishing it to
evidence.
everyone or just to the?
To everybody.
The exhibit has been received and published. It may be presented in the courtroom.
Thank you. So it looks halfway down like Lynn wrote 1-262-928-1000 is scheduling desk at hospital and will transfer you to whatever room I'm in. Do you see that?
Yes.
So as you read this, and a lot of this is about here's how to take care of my cats, leave the TVs on so the cats can have the TVs, don't touch the antenna. Instructions for Jenny, it looks like, right?
Yes.
And that's Jenny Flower.
That's what it says at the top.
And that's Jesse's mom, is that right?
I do not know that.
Okay. And she talks about her living will on here. Is that right?
Can you zoom in a little bit?
And this is somebody, that's okay, somebody who's going to the hospital back in 2015, right?
Correct.
Did you take the picture at the scene of the checkbook register with notes on it?
I don't believe so.
Did you take a picture of the Lynn's driver's license?
No.
When you said the first photograph I took was of the photo identification card at 1907 hours, what photo identification card are you referring to?
For us, at the beginning, before taking pictures, we actually take a photo card that has the date, the address we're at, what time, our incident report number, and location, including the person who's taking the pictures. So when our detectives get these pictures, they can identify what case this is from.
Got it.
Are we done with exhibit 1?
Yes, done with that.
Thank you.
Did you make a list of drugs that were found at the scene?
I personally did not.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Just briefly here, Deputy Rosenberger, there was some discussion about 2018 versus 2015. Can you just tell the jury what happened with that discrepancy?
At the time, we used typists, so we either call in via a phone, like a voicemail system, or on a recorder. Once we were completed with our reports, that we would upload them, and typists actually have to listen and type as you're talking into the recorder. And I believe that being that discrepancy, they may have heard 2018 instead of 2015.
And the jury was able to see in the exhibit 1 here, and I believe actually in exhibit 5, that it's clearly a note from 2015, correct?
Correct.
Also, there were some questions about how in your report, or lack of notes in your report, is that because nothing stood out to you on scene?
At that time, no. And furthermore, being a field training officer, I'm more hands off and I'm letting them do the investigation and I'm essentially there guiding them. So when Deputy Mitch completed his report, I made sure that he described the details and the residents to our knowledge.
Thank you, Deputy. I don't have anything else.
All right, thank you, Deputy. You may step down.
No recross here.
No.
State's next witness is Kelsey Michaelson.
All right, please have her come in. Good afternoon, Ms. Michaelson. If you would please make your way to the witness stand. It's all the way to the front of the courtroom to my right. It is up a riser. When you get there, please remain standing, raise your right hand, and my clerk, Teresa, who's on the left, will swear you in. You're, okay.
Oh, sorry. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
Please have a seat. The first thing I will ask you to do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
Kelsey Michaelson, KelseyMichaelsen.
Thank you. Go ahead. Attorney Crawford, is this still your witness?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I apologize. Just briefly, I'd be asking that Deputy Rosenberger be released from the subpoena.
Is he under any defense subpoena? Attorney Kuklin?
No, he's not.
All right, he may be released.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Michaelson, can you just tell me what you do right now for a job?
I currently work as a tech in the ER at Frater Hospital.
Okay. Additionally, do you have any experience in law enforcement?
Yes, I've been a law enforcement officer since May of 2018.
Okay. Are you still employed in a law enforcement capacity at all?
Yes, I work part-time at the Village of Pewaukee Police Department.
In what sense?
I'm a boat patrol officer there.
All right. So I believe you said May of 2018 is your extent of law enforcement experience?
Correct.
All right. Can you just tell the jury the training that you received to become a law enforcement officer?
I have a 2-year associate's degree that I received in 2018 as well. Additionally, I had 720 hours of the Law Enforcement Academy, which I graduated in May of 2018. I had additional training in my job as a law enforcement officer as well.
Were you employed with the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department in October of 2018?
I was.
All right, so I think you said you had finished up your training and the academy and all that in May, so you'd been on the job for about 5 months or so, is that fair?
Correct, and I was off field training at that point as well.
Okay. On October 3rd, 2018, were you dispatched to a residence in the Village of Pewaukee for a death investigation?
I was. It was an assist EMS.
Okay. What was your role in that investigation?
I received a witness statement from Jesse Krzeski on that case.
Okay. Do you see that individual who you identified as Jesse Krzeski in court here today?
I wouldn't be able to identify
Okay.
her.
It's been 5 years, obviously, so.
Hold on, was that a yes?
I would say no.
Well, you shook your head yes, though, when you were acknowledging.
I apologize.
Do you agree that you shook your head yes when he asked you if you would not be able to identify her?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, it's my job to make sure if someone nods their head, shrugs their shoulders, or says, that I make sure the record's clear what you meant. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Michaelson. So you had stated that your role on scene here was to get a statement from this Jesse Krzeski individual, correct?
Correct.
All right. So in part of getting her statement, did she provide a written statement to you or was it verbal?
It was both.
Okay. Can you just tell me what you recall about that statement that she gave you?
Yeah, so when we get a statement from witnesses on the scene of a death investigation, we go over the last 24 hours that they had with the victim. from what I remember with Jesse's statement, she stated that she last saw her around 10 a.m. that day when she left to go run some errands. From what I knew, Jesse was the caretaker of the individual that we were on scene with. She saw her that morning, tried to feed her some breakfast. She wasn't willing to eat. She tried to change her. She usually sits on a Chuck's pad to like collect any urine that might go on. She wanted to be left alone. Sounded like the individual that had died that day was kind of becoming more increasingly sick as the past couple of days went on, or over the past year even. And Jesse really mentioned that she just felt that like the victim, or not the victim, the person who had died was starting to decline pretty fast. She wouldn't take her meds the night before, and Jesse also noticed that some of the pills had gone missing. I didn't clarify if she counted each pill every time she gave him, but Jesse was the person who would usually give the person who died her pills.
So you said you took both an oral statement as well as a written statement, correct?
Correct.
So a written statement, was that part of this case? Did you turn that into property or anything like that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat?
So, yeah, it was probably a bad question. When you took her written statement, Jesse Krzyzewski's written statement, did you submit that to this case for this investigation?
I did.
Okay. And did you have a chance to review that written statement before court today?
I did.
And was that written statement a true and accurate copy of the written statement that you took from Ms. Krzyzewski on October 3rd, 2018?
It was.
Okay. I believe that is actually marked Exhibit 6.
Is that the right one?
Yes. Do you see anything on your screen?
My screen's black.
Okay.
No, I see it.
All right. Exhibit 6, is that the written statement that Jesse Krzyzewski gave to you?
It is.
More distinctly, that's the first page, correct?
Yes.
Ultimately, there is, I believe, 3 pages to this written statement of hers. Is
I
that
believe
yes?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd be moving Exhibit 6 into evidence and ask for permission to publish.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 6 is received. Permission to publish is granted.
So, Ms. Michaelson, as part of this written statement, I believe you had talked about earlier, you believe that she left the residence around 10 o'clock. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
And does that add up to the written statement that Ms. Krzyzewski had provided?
Yes.
Okay. In the written statement, is there talk about whether or not, when she arrived back at the residence, what Ms. Krzyzewski did?
I remember it saying that she kept talking to the deceased individual on scene and felt that there was no pulse, and then she called 911.
Okay. Additionally, as part of this statement, is there a discussion about in-home health care?
Yeah, there was supposed to be in-home health care. I don't remember the exact date. It should be in the statement when they were supposed to come. Jesse had stated that the deceased individual had pushed it off till later that week.
If I could just direct your attention to the bottom of page, or Exhibit 6, page 1, the third line from the bottom. I believe that discusses it. Can you just read out that sentence to the jury?
Yeah. She was to have home health care come Monday this week, and she pushed them back to Friday.
Thank you. Additionally, as part of this written statement, did you ask Ms. Krzyzewski if she thought the decedent, who is identified as Lynn Hernan, was suicidal or wanted to die?
I did.
And would that be on page 3 of Exhibit 6?
It is.
Can you just read her answer in whole to that question, please?
Yes. So Jesse's answer was yes and no. I know she loves her cats and was always worried about them, but she was tired of being sick and tired of not being able to get around like she used to.
What, I know you said that you wouldn't be able to identify Miss Krzyzewski, but from what you remember about that interaction with her, do you recall her demeanor during that time?
Yeah, I don't recall her being like extremely upset or anything. Isn't super abnormal in a death investigation either. It's not out of the ordinary, I should say, from what I've seen.
I just have a few more questions, Ms. Michaelson. Do you recall what Ms. Krzyzewski was wearing at the time?
I don't recall.
Okay. And additionally, I'm going to have to take us back to actually page 1 of Exhibit 6. I'm going to have you, can you just read into the record the sentence after I had errands to run, I left around 10-ish? Right around the middle of the page.
Yep. I returned back shortly before 5 p.m. and just thought she was asleep. She usually is when I get here. I kept talking to her and checked her pulse and called 911.
And additionally, well, you don't remember what Ms. Krzyzewski was wearing at the time. At the top right, I believe it talks about what her employer would have been, correct?
Correct.
And filled in there as it says that she's not working at the time of taking care of the decedent.
Correct.
Thank you, Ms. Michaelson. I don't have anything else.
Any cross?
Good afternoon, Ms. Michaelson. So
Do you need
you
this?
went to the
I'm
scene.
sorry
of-
for the interruption. Do you need the exhibit up?
I'm not at the moment, no.
Okay, thank you. Again, sorry for the interruption.
You got to the scene, you made observations. Is that right?
Correct.
Did you say you were done with your field training at this point?
I was.
When did you finish your field training?
I believe it was in July of 2018.
All right. And when you arrived at the scene, were the other officers already there?
I believe I arrived at the same time as Deputy Kralowitz.
And what about Deputy Mitch?
I believe he arrived after us.
Okay. So you're one of the first on the scene.
Correct.
Did you review your report before testifying here today?
I did.
Met with the district attorney to prepare?
I did.
And now you're working at ER at Fredert?
Correct.
Now, people don't all react the same way when you report to a death scene. Isn't that true?
Correct.
There's no one size fits all when it comes to that.
Most definitely.
In fact, when police come to talk to somebody, sometimes people are really trying to hold it together to answer questions the best they can. Is that your experience?
That's true.
People try to cooperate with you,
Yep.
answer things the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes, sorry.
It's okay.
Even when they're in a state of distress or a state of shock, they still try to cooperate with you.
Correct.
You've seen that.
Yes.
Now, when you asked, it looked when you got there and you made observations, it looked to you like a suicide, didn't it?
I don't believe I ever went in the house.
Or you never did?
I don't think so. I can't recall.
Were you told that it looked like a suicide?
I don't remember. I would assume so based on some of my questioning.
Okay. So somehow you got an impression that this was probably a suicide and you were to ask Jesse questions about that.
My overall impression was it was a person who was very ill that had passed away. That's what I remember, at least.
And you knew that the person was very ill because one of the things that you learned is that Lynn, the deceased, had just been released from the hospital on September 28th, right?
My impression was made based on all of her medications that she had and Jesse's statement that she was released from the hospital and had plenty of health problems.
And in fact, you learned that the patient was supposed to have a healthcare visit on Monday, 2 days before she died, right?
Yes,
And the patient pushed back the appointment.
that's what Jesse said.
And that appointment had been pushed back to Friday. It's what you learned.
Correct.
And you talked about Jesse telling you that there had been some odd behavior by Lynn during the week,
Correct.
in those few days that she had been out of the hospital,
Yes.
and that she was quite sick.
Yes.
And Jesse told you that, for one thing, Lynn was throwing out bills
Yes.
and saying things like, "The hospital won't get my money."
Yep, that was an understatement.
And Jesse told you that Lynn's pills were off,
Yes.
and you didn't look to see how many pills Lynn was taking, right?
No, that was Deputy Mixer's job in that case, I believe.
And she told, and you learned through Jesse that Lynn didn't want to go into a nursing home,
Correct.
and she was constantly worried about having to leave her home because of being sick,
That's what Jesse said.
and worried that she was going to have to go in some kind of a facility.
Correct.
And you learned that Lynn was tired of being sick and tired of not being able to get around like she used to.
That's what Jesse had said.
And that's what you're here to testify to today, right?
Yeah, what Jesse had said to me, yes.
All the things that you testified to for the state were things you learned from Jesse too,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you asked Jesse, do you think Lynn was suicidal? That's one of the things you asked her.
Yep.
And she said yes and no.
Yes.
She didn't say, absolutely, this woman was suicidal. This is a suicide. She didn't do that.
She did not do that, no.
Did you see that Jesse was named as a power of attorney for Lynn? Were you privy to those documents?
I didn't see the specific documents. I know that Jesse did tell me she was a power of attorney, or was listed as one.
As part of your role, did you ever go and check the garbage cans or anything in the house?
I don't think I ever went in the house.
Did you maintain the log outside of who was coming in and out?
I don't remember if I did or not.
Isn't it true that when you saw Jessie outside, before you started to talk to her, that she was sitting outside crying?
I don't remember that.
Weren't you consoling her?
I don't remember that either.
So your memory's really pretty vague from this day?
I would say so, yes. This case didn't stand out particularly high to me, I guess, and stuff. It was somewhat of a normal work day.
Thank you.
Any redirect?
I believe there are some questions about your knowledge of what happened inside the residence. I just want to confirm, from your report or what you recall, do you have any knowledge of any pills inside the residence?
I do know there was pills inside, yes.
Okay. And did you have any specific knowledge of how many pills or what kind of pills were inside the residence?
I specifically remember that Deputy Mick spent a lot of.
Object beyond the scope of my cross. Just to specific kills.
Overrule.
You can continue.
You may answer.
Okay. Can you ask the question again, please?
Yeah. So you're talking about how you had knowledge roughly that there was pills inside the residence. Did you know what kind of pills there were? How many pills there were? Those types of things?
Object is calls for hearsay.
I don't know.
Sustained as to the form of the question.
I'll move on. I don't think it's really that relevant. Did Jesse Kraszewski tell you in this written statement or oral statement that Lynn had been trying to kill herself with eye drops?
No.
Okay. So there was no discussion about eye drops, correct?
Correct.
Object to beyond the scope of my cross. It's going into new territory.
The answer may stand, but please move on.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Any redirect, or recross based on that? All right, thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
Same situation with Miss Michaelson. I'd be asking that she be released from her subpoena.
Any objection?
No.
All right, that request is granted.
Thank you. The state would next call Tabitha Kooks.
All right. Good afternoon, Ms. Kooks. If you would please make your way to the witness stand, which is all the way to the front of the courtroom. It is up a riser. When you get there, please remain standing, raise your right hand, and my clerk, Teresa, who will be across from you to the left, will swear you in. She's to the left.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please have a seat. First thing I will ask you to do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
Sure. Tabitha Kukis, T-A-B-I-T-H-A. Kukis, K as in King, U as in Union, K as in King, E as in Edward, S as in Sam.
Thank you for correcting how we said your name. My apologies. Go ahead, your witness.
Thank you. Ms. Kooks, were you previously employed as a deputy medical examiner here in Waukesha County?
That's correct.
And how long did you work in that capacity?
From February 2015 until November or December of 2021, I believe. It was almost 7 years.
As a deputy medical examiner, can you just explain to the jury what goes along with that?
Absolutely. So, deputy medical examiner in the in the county of Waukesha, essentially we have to be the eyes and ears for the medical examiner. Due to the volume of deaths in the county, it's impossible for the pathologist to individually attend each death. So it was our job to triage those cases on what could be released under natural circumstances and what needed further investigation. These cases might come in as phone calls from a hospital or a nursing facility. It would be a death attended by medical personnel, and we could answer questions from the nurses and doctors. Or in this case, it might be something that happened outside of a medical facility, unattended by any personnel, and would require response by our department to the scene. These were what we called scene deaths. We would go to the scene, we would interview anyone that was there. This included law enforcement, paramedics, witnesses, family, friends, those who found the decedent. We would collect evidence, we would document circumstances surrounding the death. We would do a body examination, and we would legally pronounce the death. Then we would determine whether or not this particular death required additional investigation by the pathologist, and if so, we would bring that decedent with us back to the office. We remain custody of the decedent, and then they would often have either an external exam or an autopsy with toxicology testing at the discretion of the pathologist.
a lot going on there, is fair to say. Did you have to undergo any training or education to become a deputy medical examiner?
Yeah, it varies from county to county on what they require. For me personally, I have an undergraduate degree in anthropology and archaeology. I have my master's degree in biological anthropology, which had additional training in death investigation and genocide. And then I also completed a training course at St. Louis University in medical legal death investigation. Additionally, after being hired at Waukesha County, we underwent yearly ongoing education training, conferences, and of course there's on-the-job training that you receive.
Okay. As part of being a deputy medical examiner, I think you might have touched on it, but I want to really emphasize this here. You're involved in death scene investigations, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So in those investigations and in death scenes over the time of your about 6 or so years that you were a deputy medical examiner, about how many death scenes did you process?
Through my entire career, I'd say over 600 were scenes, over 1,300 death cases overall.
Okay. As part of those death scenes, and I think you might have touched on it, but again, I want to highlight these things. What sorts of objects or things are you looking for at these scenes?
Sure. So obviously we're looking at the decedent themselves. We're looking at body position. We're looking at things like rigor, which is how stiff the body is. And we're looking at things like lividity, which is the blood pooling after death. That's just an effect of gravity, but we can use these things to determine whether or not the person is in the position that they died in or could have been moved afterwards. We're looking for evidence of medical history, the medications that are on scene, any paperwork. We're also looking at circumstantial evidence that's both surrounding the decedent themselves, but also in their home. Everybody lives differently, but we see a lot of patterns that present over time. So there are indicators of whether or not someone's an alcoholic, whether or not they take care of themselves. Are they home a lot? Do they hardly leave their home? We're using all of these things, I guess, to understand their life and what they may have been going through at the time of their death.
On October 3rd, 2018, were you dispatched to a residence in Waukesha County for a death scene?
Correct.
Was that death scene involving an individual, Lynn Herman?
Yes.
Okay. What did you first observe when you entered the residence?
Immediately upon entering the residence, you walk into the living room, which was open to the dining and kitchen area. So it was immediately obvious that the decedent was there in a recliner.
Did you ultimately pronounce her deceased?
Correct.
How long does that process take?
I guess it varies. There's a few steps involved that we follow per protocol for determining if someone's deceased. We check lividity, we check their body temperature, we check rigor, we check their pupils to see if there's any dilation to touch or light. We look to see if there's any reflex whatsoever. I would estimate the actual body exam itself can be performed in 5 to 10 minutes. But typically, by the time you walk in, you make contact with the police department, you do kind of a sweep of the area to get your bearings, take a few photographs. You're usually looking at 30 minutes or so after you've arrived to where you actually make that time pronouncement.
Okay. In this case, do you recall the time that you pronounced her deceased?
I do not.
Okay. If I was to tell you around, give or take, let's say 6:35 p.m., would that sound about correct?
Sure.
Okay. As part of your investigation, do you take photos of the residents
We do.
or where they actually were deceased?
Both. So we want to take photos of the decedent themselves and show their body position. We want to take a close-up photo of their face for identification purposes. We take photos of any objects that are surrounding the area of the decedent, but it's also common to take overall photos of the home. It's essentially a documentation process that allows the doctor to go through our photos as though they were there themselves and get kind of a vibe of what's going on. And then anything that stands out to us, we would also document.
Did you review those photos that you took of this incident before court today?
I did.
Okay. I'm gonna have those eventually put on your screen here, starting with Exhibit 7.
Okay.
How many photos are we talking about?
There's 14 originally.
All right, and this will be starting with
Exhibit 7.
number 7.
Yep. Yes.
Are you going to go through them all with her quickly to identify them before we publish, or one by one?
I'm going to go through them all quickly.
All right. Thank you. It's on her screen and obviously not in front of the jury yet.
Okay. Do you see Exhibit 7 on your screen?
I do.
Is this a picture that you took of the decedent Lynn Hernan?
It is.
Okay. And is that a true and accurate copy of that photo?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Exhibit 8, is that also a picture that you took of the residence?
Yes.
Is that a true and accurate copy of the photo that you took?
Yes.
Exhibit 9, is that a photo you took of the residence?
Yes.
Again, is that a true and accurate copy of the photo?
It is.
Exhibit 10, same questions.
Yes. And yes.
Thank you. I'll just make, I guess I'll ask you at the end, or with all of these, a blanket statement. Are all of these photos that you had taken on this date? Once we get there, I'll ask you that at the end, okay? So let's move on to Exhibit 11. Okay, we can move to 12. Exhibit 12. Exhibit 13. Exhibit 14. Exhibit 15, Exhibit 16, Exhibit 17, Exhibit 18, Exhibit 19, Exhibit 20, and then there's actually a jump in exhibits because we had a minor break. So I'm going to actually show you Exhibit 130 and 131 as well. So again, all blanket questions for these. These are all pictures that you took, correct?
Yes.
And are those true and accurate copies of those pictures?
Yes.
We're going to move Exhibits 7 through 20 into evidence, as well as Exhibits 130 and 131 into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
I'd also be asking for permission to publish all of these exhibits.
Exhibits 7 through 20 and 130 and 131 are all received. Permission to publish is granted.
So here's Exhibit 7 on the screen. Again, this is just a picture of the deceased Lynn Hernan, correct?
Correct.
Exhibit 8, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at the front door there and the rest of the room.
What are you looking for in these types of pictures?
I wouldn't say there's always something specific we're looking for. We're kind of trying to just give a profile of what the room looked like. So for instance, putting those two photos together, I can showcase that she was in a position in which she may have been watching television. That might have been an area she spent a lot of time in, and it makes sense that her recliner is pointed towards the television. She also has view of the front door, but I wouldn't say this particular photo is trying to say anything specifically so much as just to showcase the room.
Thank you. Exhibit 9, is that what Exhibit 9 is as well, just trying to showcase the whole residence here?
Correct.
Okay. Exhibit 10, what are we looking at in this exhibit?
This is a close-up of an area near her. I'm showcasing that she has multiple medication bottles that are within arm's reach. She has, she clearly smokes. She has an inhaler. She has got items such as pre-moistened towelettes near her. So that can be indicative that someone's spending a lot of time in that particular chair or that particular part of their house because they have daily living things near them. I'm also showing that she has multiple medications that are kind of scattered on her carpet. There's some disorganization going on. There's a spoon out of place. I'm kind of just showcasing how she lived.
Okay, thank you. Exhibit 11 here, what are we looking at?
This is a close-up of the medication bottles that were directly to her left. I'm trying to showcase the names that are on the medications as well as that her name is on each medication.
What are we looking at here in Exhibit 12?
Same thing, this is to the right of the decedent. So I'm showing that there's additional medications that are present, some without their caps on, water bottles, just kind of showing what is within arm's reach or what's near her.
Is this a close-up of that same table?
It is.
And just for the record, I'm referencing Exhibit 13. In Exhibit 14, what are we looking at here?
This is a close-up of her face and as well as the unknown residue that's on her chest.
You said earlier that you did this for about 6 years or so. Is anything strike you as out of the ordinary with this picture?
The residue on her chest, absolutely.
Why?
That's not something I had seen previously. It's not, regardless of what the residue is, whether it's an illicit substance or a prescription medication, that's not an appropriate way to take any medication. There's a lot of large pieces as well as crushed residue. It's difficult to tell from this picture, but I believe the next slide shows a close-up of her mouth in which you can see there's a piece still in the corner of her mouth. So this to me is indicative that at the very least she's taking her medications inappropriately. Even if it's something that you're prescribed, taking a medication inappropriately can cause an intoxication. So anytime we see a unknown residue or unknown substance or improper use of anything, that's a red flag for intoxication and unnatural death.
Exhibit 15, similar question.
Same thing, just a different angle. This picture shows a little bit better that there is part of a tablet that's still in her mouth, and then just a different angle or different showcase of the residue. This photo does a better job of highlighting that it's multicolored, so I would imagine that to mean multiple different tablets. Most tablets don't come with more than one color, so we have different tablets that are likely crushed here.
You were talking about a drug intoxication or those types of terms. Is this layout and the way those drugs are situated on an individual typical of a medication suicide?
No, I would say that's atypical. Usually when people overdose on their medications, they still swallow them. I have had cases where people were snorting particular medications to get that effect faster, but I would imagine most of us would have a very difficult time trying to snort off of our own chest, so that doesn't really explain that for me. There's also some very large pieces there that would be difficult to snort, and with the piece in her mouth, then it looks more like she's eating them, and I don't have an explanation for why, if she was eating them, so much would be on her chest.
All right, in Exhibit 16 here, what are we looking at?
This is a pile of documents that was in the living room directly to the right of the decedent. We do typically take photographs of anything that looks to be important. It's not atypical for people who commit suicide to leave important information out, passcodes, passwords for their bank statements, things like that. So she had a lot of information, a lot of paperwork that was in a pile in her living room. This particular piece of paper is her power of living will, So I was taking a photograph of that for its importance and also in an attempt to locate next of kin.
And Exhibit 17, what are we looking at here?
It looks like I pulled that piece of paper out and then took a full photograph. I mean, originally, the first photograph is finding it in situ, and then this photograph is taking an entire photo of the piece of paper.
What are we looking at in Exhibit 18?
It's typical for us to take photographs of driver's license for identification purposes, make sure we have the name spelled correctly, the address.
Perfect. So you were the one that would have been taking that picture?
Yes.
Okay. Exhibit 19, what is this photo?
This is in her bedroom. This is a locked safe that was found in that position. It was open upon my arrival, and there appears to be another copy of the will inside.
Do you recall if there was anything else notable in her bedroom?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Is that power of living will essentially the same document that you would have located next to her in the living room?
It appeared to be the same, yes.
In Exhibit 20, what are we looking at here?
We typically document valuables, so I'm just taking a photograph of the jewelry that she's wearing.
Why do you do that?
For evidence purposes, that way if, say, she goes to the funeral home and family comes forward and says they're missing a giant sapphire ring, I can go back to my photographs and show that she wasn't wearing that particular piece of jewelry upon my taking custody of her. So it's basically just a trail of evidence for anything that might be deemed valuable.
So when the MD's office takes her body, her jewelry stays with her, correct?
Yes, anything that's on her is going to come with her to the medical examiner's office.
Okay, thank you. 130, I believe, is that just a kind of opposite of
Yep, just
spectrum of the
another
previous photo?
view showcasing the various pills and capsules that are on the floor. Saltine crackers can be indicative that someone's not feeling well, just showcasing what's near her.
Okay. And lastly, 131. What are we looking at in this picture?
I presume that is where she crushed whatever was on her chest. It's a plate with medication like that's the cap to a medication bottle, and this appears to be an unknown powdery substance left behind on a plate.
Okay. When you went throughout the residence, did you go into the garage? Do you recall?
I don't recall going into the garage.
Okay. There's obviously the pill bottles from one of the earlier exhibits.
Mm-hmm.
Did you take inventory of the medication that was found in the pill bottles?
Once I took them back to the medical examiner's office, I did.
Why is that helpful?
That's our protocol. It can show things like whether or not they're taking their medication appropriately. You know, if not as many pills are in the bottle as should be. If there's too many in the bottle, then we're not taking our prescription medication. For her in particular, I recall some of those bottles being rather outdated. So she had a collection of medications that would not have correlated to the month of her death. So that could be indicative that she's saving her medications. It could be indicative that she didn't take them appropriately. Could be indicative that she's been living in a state where she's been primarily on that recliner and in that living room ill for some time.
And again, is this inventory of that medication, is that important to your office in determining the cause and manner of death?
That could be viewed either way. On the one hand, no, because all that really matters is what the toxicology shows. All that really matters is what's in the decedent's bloodstream at the time of death, not necessarily what's there. And on the other hand, sometimes we take that medication back and we find another doctor's name that we can use to track down additional medical history, or It helps us, answer questions. The family might come back and ask us, is she taking her medications? Should we have made her take her medications? And the counts might help us answer those questions. So I think it's important for the overall investigation, but not necessarily important for cause and manner of death.
While you were the one that inventoried the medication, actually, can you say where those missing pills would have been potentially?
What do you, I don't understand.
So if she doesn't have the correct amount of prescription drug in the bottle, would you be able to say where those pills are?
No, she could have, no.
And I kind of want to go back a little bit to Exhibit 131. So you're under the assumption that this is crushed medication, correct?
It appears to be some sort of crushed unknown substance.
Do you know how that medication or substance got crushed?
Object speculation.
Overruled.
You can answer that.
I could theorize, but no, I don't know for certain. There was an explanation that was given to me by...
Object to hearsay. It's going to call for hearsay.
The original question was answered, so I'll sustain the objection as being narrative, and you may ask your next question.
Thank you. As part of taking inventory, though, of medications, we're going to kind of jump back to that. Does the medical examiner's office have that in their file?
Yes.
Okay. And did you review that property or inventory before court today?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you done with the photos?
Yes. And I
Thank
believe
you.
those are marked as exhibits 21 and 22.
All right, you can show them to the witness first.
We're showing you exhibit 21. Can you just describe that?
It's not up on our screen
Oh,
just
sorry.
yet. There's a delay sometimes. It's up now.
Okay. Can you describe exhibit 21?
It's an inventory of the medications that I took custody of from the scene.
And is that a true and accurate copy of that?
Yes.
I believe there's actually 2 pages of that. I just want to confirm that.
Yes.
That's a different exhibit.
This is the second page.
It is? Okay.
All right. Now
Sorry about
moving
that.
to exhibit 22. Can you describe what that is?
It's an inventory of medication from the scene.
Okay.
It's an inventory of things that were not found within a medication bottle that I would have used an outside source to identify that particular medication to the best of my ability.
And again, that's a true and accurate copy of what would be in the medical examiner's file.
Yes.
Looking at exhibit 22, I don't see a drug or talk of any eye drops or Visine. Would you have noted that on this exhibit?
No.
Okay. Speaking of that, though, you were making, notes of or things on the scene. You were taking photos of items that were on the scene. Do you recall any eye drops or Visine?
Not that I recall.
Okay. And just for the record, Your Honor, move exhibits 21 and 22 into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibits 21 and 22 are received.
Moving forward in this investigation, did you have any contact with a Jesse Krzyzewski?
Via phone.
Okay, when did that take place?
The night of the death, after I returned back to the medical examiner's office, I did reach out to her.
So you didn't make any contact with Ms. Krzyzewski on scene.
She was no longer present.
Did that strike you as odd?
Yes,
Object.
Sustained, I'll strike the answer, lack of foundation.
So Ms. Krzyzewski didn't remain on scene, correct?
correct.
And in your 6 years of being a deputy medical examiner, is it common for individuals who are related or friends or family to stay on scene of these investigations?
Yes, they usually stay on scene.
Okay. In this case, again, Ms. Krzyzewski didn't stay on scene. Did that strike you as odd?
Yes,
So you did have contact, though, with her over the phone later that night, correct?
correct.
What did you talk about?
We talked about Ms. Hernan's medical history, why Ms. Krzyzewski was involved in visiting her often, her behavior, just kind of background information about the decedent themselves.
All right. Moving forward, did you have any further communication with Ms. Krzyzewski?
I believe she called the office a few times after that.
Okay, what was she calling the office about?
She wanted the cause and manner of death.
All right. Do you recall when that was?
I do not.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness to refresh her recollection with her report? I don't have a physical exhibit or anything like that.
Sure. Please show the document to the defense first.
And just to clarify the record, it's actually the case call log, not her investigative report.
All right, please make sure you mark it for identification purposes.
Okay. Ms. Kukas, can you read out to the jury?
Hold on, you need to establish she knows what that is.
Okay, apologize. Do you recall looking at this case call log before court today?
I do.
Is that a true and accurate copy of that case call log?
Yes.
And again, I'll get that marked as an exhibit later, but you would have inputted that information in there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to read off to the jury in terms of the call log, the second call log down from the top.
Object after reading from this document. You can refresh her recollection
Apologize.
and ask her the question.
Sustained.
If you could just review that document and then we can go from there.
I recall
Okay.
this.
So what was the topic of
Hold
that?
on, just turn it over.
I can
I
actually.
want her to testify from her memory, not the document at this point.
So what was talked about in the conversations with Ms. Krzyzewski?
The follow-up conversations, we discussed that there was no cause or manner of death yet determined. Toxicology results had not come back yet, so I didn't have anything to share. Our office was also reached out to by John Fryatt, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who self-identified.
Object. It's going to call for hearsay.
Sustained. Also,
If you could just continue without talking about Mr. Fryatt, please.
Okay. Ms. Krzyzewski called asking for cause and manner of death, in which I did not have anything to provide her.
Okay. Did she call you in October of 2018?
Yes.
Then did she call the medical examiner's office in January and February as well?
That sounds correct.
Okay. I don't have anything else, thank you.
all right, before cross, please go ahead and mark that exhibit. just for identification purposes.
Your Honor, we're gonna have that brought in, the copy that I had, I briefly made a note on it, so that's going to be marked as Exhibit 212 on a fresh copy though.
Exhibit 212, all right, thank you. All right, Attorney Kukler, will you be doing cross?
I will.
Go ahead.
If I could get my equipment to be proper. Good afternoon, is it Kooks?
Kukas.
Kookus? Okay, thanks. And what do you do for work at this time?
I manage a music lounge and event center.
Any particular reason you left the medical examiner's office?
No.
Just a change of career?
Yes.
When you received calls, you mentioned that Jesse called the office 3 times over the course of a few months, right?
That sounds correct.
That's not unusual for people to call the medical examiner's office to find out if you have any information, is it?
No, it's not.
People do it all the time.
Yes.
Yet they want to know if you've determined cause of manner of death yet.
Correct.
You went to the scene of Lynn's death,
Yes.
and you made observations at the scene,
Yes.
and you collected evidence,
Yes.
and you took photographs.
Yes.
And then you also asked a police officer or a deputy sheriff to also take photographs?
I would not request that of the police department. They would do that on their own.
So you didn't do that here? You didn't ask them to take photographs?
No, I don't recall asking them to perform any particular duties.
And that's not something you would do. If you wanted a photograph, you take it yourself.
Correct.
And that's what you did here?
Yes.
Okay. And anything that you thought was significant, you took a photograph of?
Yes.
And anything that you thought was, should be gathered for evidence for your purposes, cause of manner of death, you took those things?
If it fell within our jurisdiction, yes.
For example, the medications, you gathered all those up.
I did.
And those were medications we saw on the tables to Lynn's right and to her left, is that right?
Yes.
And also medications you found on the floor.
Yes.
And did you go gather medications from her medicine chest?
I can't recall if it was medications from her chest specifically. I do believe there were some medications found in her purse in her bedroom that were also collected. So any medications that were prescription, I would have collected had I found them.
And you found the ones in her purse?
Yes.
And so you went and you looked through her purse?
Absolutely.
Is that where you found her driver's license?
The driver's license had already been procured by the police department upon my arrival, so they provided me with that.
You're not sure where they found it?
I could not testify to that.
And you looked into her medical history too, a
Yes.
little bit? And you saw medical paperwork right there at her residence?
I did.
And you noted that she had proctocolitis?
I don't recall making that determination.
Do you want to see your report?
Sure.
I'll bring up what we've marked as Exhibit 525.
I'm sorry, what was the number?
I think it's 525. Yes, 525, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, will we show that to the witness?
It takes a moment, so be patient. It's up now.
All right. So I'm showing you, you see it's marked 525. You see the sticker on there at the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes,
And is this your report?
it is.
All right. I'm moving down to page 2. You have a subject, or I see your signature at the bottom of page 2. Is that your signature?
That is.
And I see on here confidential medical history. Did you input that information?
I did.
And so when you looked at her, does this refresh your recollection?
Yes, it looks like a list of diagnoses that her paperwork indicated.
So what diagnoses did you observe for Miss Hernan?
None of those diagnoses would have been observable in her deceased state.
Fair enough. What did you observe paperwork to show? What did you read on paperwork for diagnosis for Lynn Hernan?
The list of diagnoses that I have listed here would have been gathered from her medical paperwork.
Sure. Can you tell the jury what they are?
Listing off proctocolitis, hypertension, acute kidney failure, nausea with vomiting, hypercalcemia, hyponatremia,
It's okay.
abdominal pain, elevated liver function, metabolic acidosis, urinary retention, sinus tachycardia, Clostridium difficile, and renal failure.
And then there was also a note in her paperwork, wasn't there, about a palliative care encounter?
There was.
And when somebody is talking to somebody from palliative care, that's end-of-life care.
It's the stage right before that, yes.
And when somebody is possibly going to go into hospice.
Yes.
Do you recall what the paper was specifically that you read about the palliative care?
I believe it was a discharge summary, perhaps, from her last hospital visit.
And it's true, she had just gotten out of the hospital a few days earlier, right?
I can't tell you how soon it was, but it was recent, yes.
And then we're moved for admission, Your Honor, of Exhibit 525 and request to publish this page.
Any objection?
I'm not objecting.
Exhibit 525 is received. Permission to publish is granted.
It takes a minute for things to pop up on screens. There we go.
Is it in the jury box yet? No. There's a little bit of a delay sometimes with that. It can be. Someone give me a thumbs up when you get it in the jury box as well. I promise it'll be there. It can be 30 seconds.
Still nothing in the jury. There we go.
Thank you. All right. Lots of thumbs up.
Thank you. All right. So this is what you were reading from, is that right?
Correct.
And it lists the paperwork, the medical diagnosis for Lynn that you observed on paperwork.
Yes.
Also lists the medications that you collected from the residents, true?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the purposes or side effects and things like that for medications, generally speaking?
Generally?
For example, you listed alprazolam. Is that the first one you listed?
It appears to be.
Okay. Well, you're looking at it, aren't you?
Yes, that's the first one I listed.
All right. And that's a sedative, isn't it?
I believe that's one of the side effects it can have, yes.
Isn't that why people are given it, for anxiety?
That's beyond my scope. I don't prescribe medications.
Okay. And would you agree that this particular medication can cause somebody as a side effect to become paranoid or to have suicidal ideations?
That's
I don't know how she can answer that. She just talked about her lack of knowledge.
I'll
with this.
sustain it as to lack of foundation and qualifications.
So that's what I was asking you before, so I'm going to be clear. If I ask you questions about these medications, will you know? Will you know what they're for?
That's beyond my scope.
So you don't know what any of these are?
I might know what some of them are typically used for, but I could not testify as to why she was prescribed them or someone else might be.
You don't know whether any of them are dangerous or not dangerous? You don't have information?
Define dangerous or not dangerous.
Dangerous, something that somebody could, for example, take too many of and overdose, die.
There's a lot of medications that can be prescribed and over-the-counter that can happen with.
Well, I wasn't talking about over-the-counter medications, I'm talking about Lynn Hernan's confidential medications. Are you able to testify to any, whether if taken too many of, can cause somebody to die from an overdose?
No, I think that's better.
Hold on.
Cause for speculation.
No, the question was asked, do you know? And so she may answer. Go ahead.
No, I think that's beyond my scope. It's for a doctor to determine whether or not something's an intoxication.
Okay. Now, when you were at the scene, well, I'm going to continue to go through some things in your report. You arrived at the scene at 18:10 hours.
Yes.
That's 6:10, right?
PM, correct.
6:10 p.m.
Attorney Kukler, do you still need the document up, or are you done with publishing what you needed to the jury?
For the moment, I'm done. Thank you. It could come down.
As you've noticed, I like to bring the documents down and continue with the testimony if they're not needed, and I've done that for both sides, so go ahead.
Did you talk to Jesse at the scene?
No.
So all the information that you put in your report about what Jesse said, did that come from someone else?
Correct. If it's, it depends on the heading that's underneath there. So we do interview anybody that's there, including law enforcement. So they would have provided me with what she may have told them at scene to give a background, but then the information under non-confidential history, which outlines my conversation with Jesse, occurred via telephone after I arrived back to the office.
So my question for you is, in your report, when you put history of events, that Jesse stops by Lynn's home 2 to 3 times a day to assist her, that Lynn is didn't seem herself lately, struggling with her mood, that Lynn those statements, you got those from law enforcement?
Correct. History of events is my interview with law enforcement.
And so when the information that you put in here about Lynn ripping up medical bills or leaving her will out again, that came from law enforcement?
If it's in that same section, yes.
And you've reviewed your report before testifying here?
Yes.
I would like to finish the question first. You reviewed your report before testifying here?
Yes.
So you know that that's in your report?
I know it's in that section, as well as I believe the second section under non-confidential history.
And part of your history of events is that Lynn has a history of abusing prescription medication.
I can't recall. I can't say I memorized my report.
Okay, that's all right. Judge, we'd like to show it to the witness.
Perfect.
Presume reviewing your report will refresh your recollection?
Yes, please.
All right, go ahead.
I'm just going to show it to you, not to the jury. If you would review what's on your screen, history of events, read it to yourself and let me know once you've read that paragraph. You can take that down from the witness. Did that refresh your recollection?
It did.
So is it accurate that you have in your report that Lynn has a history of abusing prescription medications?
That was information that the police gave me.
I asked you if that's in your report.
It is in my report.
And in your report, did you also indicate that she, meaning Lynn, crushes her pills due to issues swallowing?
Yes.
That Lynn has been unwell for several years?
Yes.
That doctors have been unable to diagnose her with a definitive illness?
Correct.
And that when Jessie was asked by police if she thought Lynn was suicidal, she was unsure?
Correct.
You indicated in your report that it was a tidy, clean condo that Lynn lived in.
Yes.
How many bedrooms in that condo?
I believe there was one bedroom.
How many bathrooms?
I believe there was one bathroom.
And you said, I think, that you went in the bedroom because that's where you found the prescription in Lynn's purse,
Correct.
or some prescriptions.
Yes.
How many were in her purse?
I don't recall.
Do you know which ones specifically you found in her purse?
I do not.
Is there any way we can look at the medication log and determine which were in her purse and which were somewhere else?
It may say in the log where I found them specifically, but that would be the only indication.
Okay. And the observations you made at the scene were that there were 3 tables to Lynn's left cluttered with multiple prescription medications.
Yes.
And I'm going to bring up, I'd like to show the photographs to the witness that have already been admitted into evidence.
So you're talking about
State's
exhibits 7 through 20 and 130 and 131.
No, I thought the state started showing, did they not show the scene photos?
Yes, those are exhibits 7 through 20 and 130 and 131.
I see. Okay, well then, I will start there. Thank you, Judge.
Sure.
Okay,
Would you like to publish while you're doing
I
this as
would.
well?
I'd like to show them to the jury and talk about each photo with the witness.
Go ahead.
So I am showing you what's marked and previously admitted as Exhibit 7. Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
And that's how you saw Lynn when you arrived at the scene, is that right?
Correct.
And and you said that you take a look at things to observe the scene and make sure that there's no evidence that a person's been moved. And as you looked at Lynn, it didn't look like she had been moved. True?
That's correct.
And that's the TV, and you just wanted us to see that because you wanted to see that she was facing the TV and she could also see who was coming in and out of the condominium. Is that right?
That's fair to say.
And I wish I could do this easier.
If you want to have us stop publishing for a moment, you could open each of them up and then click from one to the next.
Oh, I see.
Would you like to do that?
How do I do that?
Open each one in, I think you're in Adobe, and then you click the tabs on top.
Okay.
Why
we'll
don't
do
we
that.
we'll stop publishing for a moment.
What do I do?
So you know how you were going back to the
Yes, to
the file? Yes. You should be able to highlight using the control key each exhibit you want to open, and if it works, they'll all open separate tabs, but
All right, that sounds,
you have to simultaneously, not that way, hit control and then each one, but it can't do where it's at the moment. Yeah, there you go.
well, I won't be able to do that apparently, so we'll just keep doing it the way I'm doing it.
Problem.
I'm showing you what's marked as Exhibit 10 now,
All right, we'll republish. There you go.
and do you see that?
Yep, it's on my screen now.
Okay, great. And there we can see some pills on the floor, is that right?
Yes.
Some that seem to have spilled out of bottles, right?
Yes, perhaps.
Or
I can't testify to how they got there, but there are capsules and tablets on the floor.
and we can see an open prescription bottle on the floor too, can't we?
Yep,
It's missing the lid.
it is.
And we see an ashtray with one finished cigarette and one ready to go, or maybe was just smoked for a minute?
Appears so, yes.
And there's lighters there, appears that Lynn smoked cigarettes.
Yes.
Did you take pictures of her cigarette, or her packs of cigarettes?
I don't believe I did.
And now, the pills are in a little different position now on that same table. Did you move them to put them in like a semicircle so you could get a better picture of them?
Yes, I'm trying to show the names of the medications and her name on each bottle.
And so when we see what's marked Exhibit 11, that's not how you found them, that's how you wanted to demonstrate them.
That was to make them more readable. The way they were found was in the original first few photos.
Right. This is how you put them up for display.
Correct.
Okay. And this is another table to the right side of Lynn that you took a picture of because it shows more pill bottles.
Correct.
One that doesn't have a lid on it, true?
That's true.
And this is Exhibit 12.
And that was 12. I'll confirm that for you.
And Exhibit 13, is that just a close-up of the same thing?
Yes.
And you took a close-up for what reason on this picture?
I think I'm just trying to see if I can get the names to be made out in the photograph. Maybe I thought the first one came out a little blurry.
And when you looked at all the pill bottles here, all the pill bottles were in the name of Lynn Hernan, right?
As I recall, yes.
If you had seen pill bottles for someone else, you would have noted it.
Yes.
That would have been a big red flag, right?
I would have noted that.
All right. And let's try again. And Exhibit 14, this is a close-up of Lynn. She has a chain around her neck, right?
Yes.
And you later on took a closer look at that and determined those are her father's dog tags, right?
Yes.
From the military.
Yeah.
Which one has? I'm going to show you Exhibit 29.
Your Honor, this isn't in evidence.
Let's take it off the screen so she can identify it.
Can you take a look at Exhibit 29?
Oh, it'll take a moment.
And I would note, Your Honor, this is not a photo
Well,
that she took.
She can be questioned about it. She was at the scene. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you see Exhibit 29 in front of you?
I can.
Is this, whether you took this photo or not, is this how you remember seeing Lynn in the scene on October 3rd, 2018?
It is.
Now, look at that table to Lynn's left. I know you testified earlier that there were no eye drops at the scene, but do you in fact, now that you take a close look at that table to her left, see a bottle of eye drops next to the toilet paper?
I see what could be eye drops. I can't say for certain what those are.
Okay. I move for admission of Exhibit 29 and ask to publish.
Any objection?
I am objecting. This is not a photo that this witness took.
Overrule. Exhibit 29 is received. Permission to publish is granted.
Can everybody see Exhibit 29 now? No? Okay. Can see it now? Okay. And so this is how you remember the scene. Now that you look at this, this is accurate.
It appears.
And you didn't make a note of the drops, whatever those drops were, anywhere in your report, true?
That's true.
And would it be fair to say that okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Would it be fair to say that you were not thinking about eye drops when you were at this house on October 3rd, 2018?
That's fair.
And so, if there were eye drops around the house, they probably wouldn't have caught your attention.
If there was 1 or 2 bottles like anyone else's house, no, they would not have caught my attention.
And in fact, this didn't catch your attention because until now you didn't really notice it.
Correct.
But those do look like eye drops, do they not?
Could be nasal spray. I really can't say what that is.
Okay. We can take that down, Judge, or Madam Clerk. Now, I didn't see any photographs of waste baskets. Did you take any?
Not that I recall.
You did make a note that you saw liquor bottles in a waste basket,
Yes,
but you didn't photograph them.
I did not.
Do you remember if they were vodka?
I do not.
You couldn't tell us today what kind of liquor they were.
No.
Which wastebasket, was it in the kitchen where you saw the liquor
I
bottles?
believe it was the kitchen, yes.
Do you have any knowledge as you sit here today of what else was in that wastebasket?
Nothing that I recall.
What about in the bathroom wastebasket?
Nothing that caught my attention.
In the wastebasket in the living room, do you have any recollection of what was in that?
Nothing that caught my attention.
Because again, really you were focused on medications, mostly.
I was focused on everything in the scene, but unless something appeared out of place, I wouldn't have necessarily documented it.
You said that you, did you bring a medical bag with you to the scene? Did you bring a medical bag with you to the scene?
I brought my backpack. I don't know if I would call it a medical bag.
And that's what you take to scenes, your backpack?
Yes, my scene bag, yes.
Okay, and what do you have in your scene bag?
Various items, gloves. There's probably a pocket knife would have been in it, a tape measure, additional forms, documents in case I needed someone to fill something out, extra paper, tape in case, paper bags that we used often for gunshot wounds.
Do you carry a thermometer with you?
We carry an ear thermometer that we use for babies.
Well, because one of the things you said to the state was that one of the things you do at the scene is you take a temperature.
Of the room, yes. There would have been a room thermometer, not a body thermometer.
Okay, the only body temperature item you have is an ear thermometer.
Yes.
And you didn't take Lynn's temperature.
We typically do not take temperatures of decedents, no.
And again, I'm not really asking generally, I'm just asking about this case.
No, I did not take her body temperature.
Okay. You did take a look at whether or not you started to see, I thought you said rigor, but isn't it rigor mortis?
There's debate on the pronunciation.
Okay, so rigor mortis or rigor mortis, however you want to pronounce it, you took a look at that, right?
I did.
And that's where muscles on a body start to stiffen up, right?
Yes.
And you noted that rigor was present in her jaw and her neck
That sounds correct.
and in her upper extremities.
That sounds correct.
And there was no rigor yet in her lower extremities or in her stomach area, true?
There wouldn't have been, I don't think we would document rigor in her stomach, but, and not in her lower extremities, no.
I guess I should have been precise, the trunk. You look at the trunk, don't you?
Yes.
It wasn't yet in her trunk or her lower extremities.
No, I don't recall it being in her hips or her legs.
Okay. And You said you're trained in medical death scene investigation, and as part of that, have you been trained in doing that with the Spitz and Fisher? Are you familiar with their teachings in that?
No, I don't recall a specific textbook used.
When you've studied in your death scene investigation, in your training though, and in looking at Riger, you know, do you not, that starts to set in 1 to 2 hours after death.
That's a good average.
Now, you arrived at the house at 6:10.
Yes.
When Riger starts in the face and the jaw, ultimately moving into the trunk, into the lower extremities, that whole process is usually complete in 6, maybe 8 hours. True?
There's a pretty wide range when it comes to looking at rigor mortis. Everything from the temperature of the room, the clothing the decedent is wearing, what kind of material they're on, if they're covered with a blanket, all of those things have to be factored in. It starts with smaller muscles and then goes to the larger muscles, so I wouldn't say that it goes to the trunk prior to the legs.
It could go to the legs and then the trunk.
It could.
Sure. And of course, it can vary if you're, for instance, a person is outside in a cold or in a cold area, for example, it might not progress at sort of the normal fashion.
Absolutely.
But you did take the temperature in her condo, it was 79 degrees.
It was.
Okay. So it wasn't cold in her condo,
No, I'd say that's a bit warm.
depending on a person's health,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
People who sit around a lot and aren't moving a lot get colder.
Very often.
So if we were to look at the Riger that was in Lynn, in her jaw, and her neck, you took a look at her sometime between 6:10 and 6:40,
Yes.
because it said it took you about a half an hour to do everything that you needed to do at the scene.
Yes.
And so at the point that you saw her, would you agree that the Riger is probably somewhere between 2 and 4 hours?
That's very difficult to put any sort of time frame on. We don't typically give a time frame or an estimated time of actual death.
You wouldn't disagree with literature that indicates that the typical Riger is complete in the lower extremities in somewhere in the 6 to 8 hour range.
I imagine that's what the literature says. It was my job to observe the Riger, and how that was interpreted by the doctor is beyond my scope.
Okay. Have you done any research in that area at all, or any study in that area?
Not particular academic study, no.
You saw water bottles at the scene, or at least a water bottle. You didn't collect that, did you?
No.
How many water bottles were at Lynn's home?
I don't recall.
Do you know if there were any on the kitchen counter?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
When you took pictures of different parts of rooms, you only took limited pictures in rooms, right? You didn't take an overview of all the rooms, like the bedroom.
That's fair.
The bathroom. You didn't do that.
Correct.
At the time, you were focused on medications, it seems like,
I was focused on the decedent and what was surrounding her.
and any medications that you saw elsewhere. You focused on.
Yes, we do typically focus on medications. That's part of our protocol.
You said that that Lynn was wearing no bottoms, is that right?
Correct.
But she had a blanket over her,
Correct.
and she had an absorbent pad of some sort underneath her.
Yes.
Did you take any pictures of the toilet in the bathroom?
I did not.
You learned when you got non-confidential history in your report that, in fact, Lynn was released from the hospital last Friday. Do you remember that?
I recall she had been in the hospital recently.
Do you remember that you indicated in your report she had just been released on Friday?
Yes.
And you indicated that it was recommended that she enter an inpatient rehabilitation facility for physical therapy, but she refused.
Correct.
She also declined recommendation for home health care.
That's what I was told.
She had an appointment yesterday for blood work, but refused to go.
That's what I was told.
Seems like she was pushing back her medical appointments.
That's what I was informed.
And with the non-confidential history, was that also from law enforcement?
No non-confidential history would have come from Ms. Kraszewski.
Okay. And so Ms. Kraszewski told you that Lynn was tired of being ill,
Yes.
that she was afraid of being declared incompetent and put in a nursing home.
Yes.
What you asked her about suicide, Jesse, was uncertain.
Yes.
But she did admit she thinks Lynn takes too many pills,
Yes.
including pain pills and sleeping medication.
That's what she told me.
And that Jesse told you it was common for Lynn to crush medications because of her problems swallowing.
That's what she told me.
Even though you took medications out of Lynn's purse, you didn't take a photograph of the purse.
I don't believe I did.
I don't see it in the photographs.
Correct. So I don't believe I did.
The state said that, or strike that. Did you see, you indicated in your report that you saw some crushed medications on Lynn's chest.
There was something crushed on her chest, yes.
Something crushed on her chest, and some kind of pill looked like part of a pill in her mouth.
Appeared to be some sort of tablet.
You didn't say anything in here about pills in her hair.
No, I don't recall anything in her hair.
If you had seen anything like that in your hair, you would have made a note of it.
I would have.
And again, you noted that she was wearing the dog tag, which bore the name Robert Wallace Hernan.
Yes.
And you learned that was her father,
Yes.
her deceased father.
Correct.
You learned that that you saw and you took a picture of her will, a power of attorney or living will. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's already been admitted as Exhibit 19, I think. Let me just be sure about that.
Attorney Kugler, I apologize for the interruption, but I need to take a comfort break before we continue. I think my jurors need to as well. We'll try to at least, yeah, they're shaking their heads. I'm gonna take a pause and then before I bring them back out, we'll talk about how much time with this witness and I'll make a
Okay.
decision on if we're gonna break. All right. All rise for the jury, please.